everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Medical Myths, the show about what not to do with your body. And my special guest today is Cosmic Kyle. How are you doing, Kyle?
I am doing wonderful. The energies are aligned and I'm ready to go.
Which planet is in the first house right now?
Oh no.
I have no
uh,
idea
I
either.
don't
It's
know.
okay.
And I'm not sure it matters, but let's see.
So I'm sure that a lot of people in my audience have seen you around in multiple other streams, multiple other places, in chats and moderating and all that kind of stuff. But for those people who haven't been acquainted with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I go by CosmicKyle on YouTube. I do very short introduction videos to different astronomy topics, including the planets, stars, black holes, etc. Um, I have currently gone through an entire list of our solar system's planets, so that's all on my channel. And the bonus episode for Pluto, because as we all know, Pluto is not a planet. I've I've had arguments with so many people about that. It'll drop within the next day or so,
Okay,
and
awesome.
yeah.
So, so Kyle, of course, being Cosmic Kyle and doing these space videos, there's a very particular reason why I wanted to bring on Kyle, and that is for today's topic of astrology. And we all know here that astrology is bunk. But there's a field within astrology, and I say field as if it's a legitimate academic discipline. But there's a branch of astrology that is medical astrology. And I am not surprised because I mean you can claim anything as medical if you really want to. But I was looking into this and it's ridiculous and it really doesn't make sense. But I'm not someone who studies astronomy and like the real sciences of space. So I thought that it would be good to have somebody on here today who knows more about that and can give input on why this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So before we kind of dive into the article that I have pulled up, why do you think people are so drawn to astrology?
Oh well, um, a lot of astrology, horoscopes, etc., are what's called Barnum statements. So
Mhm.
it's a vague statement that could apply to just about anybody. You know, so when you're reading your horoscope, you see these things in it that vaguely apply to your life, but you attribute so much meaning to it because of the seemingly accurate nature of it.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah,
So to people who don't study space, um, do you think that the alignment of the planets can impact people on such an individualized level? Does that make any sense?
it couldn't. I mean, the planets are little more than small balls of rock and just dense matter that isn't particularly special. I mean,
Mhm.
that's it boggles my mind to try to draw the connections that people who follow astrology try to make. It's almost like a game of connect the dots where you get to place the dots yourself.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about this because this article that we're getting into it leaves a lot of questions to be asked. And so I think let's dive into it and we can address some of our other points as we go because I don't want to give too much away because this is a fun one. So we have medical astrology, 12 astrology houses and diseases. So this is based on the birth chart, where I mean, and I'm not even super familiar on how they do the thing with the birth chart in general. Um, but you have like your primary sign, and then like you have these other signs that go with it, and it's very specific about how you determine what all of your signs are. And I don't think we're going to cover that, all of that in this episode, because we're going to focus on the medical side of astrology. But they start off by saying the human body has a very deep connection with diseases. In fact, diseases are an important part of our lives. According to medical astrology, each sign and each planet is related to a particular type of disease. We can also say that a person may be affected by a certain type of diseases if his planet or zodiac sign becomes weak, although it is not necessary that you will suffer from all diseases. However, this grammar is something else, but I know this isn't English is not their first language.
Right.
So I'm going to dismiss a lot of the grammar issues because that's not really the point here. However, a certain type of disease might harm you. So in this context, let's talk about the 12 astrology houses and diseases related to them. So right away, this first paragraph, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, it said that you may or may not be affected by these diseases. So it's really doesn't seem like an accurate way to gauge your body.
Right, and it's using vague things, because we do all become affected with at least one disease at some point in our lives. So
Sure.
they're taking something so general and that applies to everybody because they know they can get a hit with it. Like you're saying with the Barnum statements, like they can target everybody with this, so you can identify with, yes, I have experienced this myself. And then as they go deeper, you're more likely to identify with other things because they've already gotten something right. You're already primed to think that they are correct in this, even though we know that everybody deals with this. It's nothing special for them to make this connection because we know it exists. But what do you think about certain types of diseases if your planet or zodiac sign becomes weak?
Such it's wow. Where to start? First of all, what does it mean to be weak in your zodiac sign? I suppose. You know,
Don't know.
I'm a diabetic. I don't exactly see how the orbits of Mars affect me in that way. How does Mars affect my pancreas?
So here's my question for them, I guess, on that is they're they're saying that these planets can impact your body and can cause very specific disease processes. So that's something that we could demonstrate, right? Could we have a study and take a bunch of people with diabetes? Should a significant amount of those people, like if we went back in their history, would they have been exposed to um, a certain zodiac sign or a certain weakening of their planet? Like, could we trace this back, find all these people, figure out where the alignments of the planets were at that time? If
Roughly,
that's
yeah.
true, should we be able to see that?
We would. That would be something that is objective and verifiable.
So the funny thing is, and we'll go through this farther along too, but they, in this article and in other articles as well, because I was trying to find the best sources to really understand where they're coming from and what they're trying to communicate. But the problem is, every single article that I've seen does not give any explanation of how this happens. They just say, and we'll see it in this one, this article just lists the diseases related to each of the signs and each of the houses, but they never even attempt to explain why this is or how this happens. It seems very lazy.
Yeah, there's no action or mechanism that they're describing, and it almost seems like you read this, and if by chance you have something that correlates to it, those who believe it just latch on.
Absolutely. It seems almost like I before I say the next point, I'll go to the next paragraph in the rest of the article because I don't want to spoil it. They say each of our body parts links with a specific zodiac sign. However, some zodiac signs threaten disease of prolonging, chronic, and tedious nature. Although each sign has a specific quality and specification and plays a very vital role in the structure of our body. So I have questions. I have a lot of questions because they claim that the alignment of the planets at the time of your birth matters. But even if the alignment of the planets and stars and everything impacted human physiology, would that not impact all humans at the same time, or at least it would impact us in largely the same way at the same time based on where those planets are? Because all of us are on planet Earth experiencing the same physics, the same gravitational pulls from the bodies around Earth. Like, we're all experiencing that pretty equally. So how come we have differences in people based on their birth month and
Right.
it's not affecting all of us in the same way?
And I just had a thought, like there are more planets in the universe than there are stars.
Oh, wow.
So, so yeah, because every star roughly has at least one planet around it.
Okay.
You, of course, you get wandering stars and of that nature, but there are more planets than stars in the universe. Why is it just the 8 planets of our solar system that have any impact? Like, where's the cutoff in distance?
That's a good point. And if Pluto is not a planet, does it play in?
According to astrologists, yes, Pluto's important, which is funny to me because Pluto is just one of the tens of thousands of icy bodies all over that portion of the solar system. It's really nothing special.
Yeah, it's interesting. So here's where we get into the fun stuff. So we have the zodiac signs and the body parts. So we have each of the signs here that relate to a specific body part. Um, so Aries is the head, the brain, and the face, which is funny because you'll notice in this list that there is overlap amongst body regions, and there's some very weird criteria for what includes something in one category and what includes something in another category.
Yeah, there's the
Because we
problem of
have in
cutoff again.
yeah, and in Taurus we have the lips, which are arguably parts of the face. So the face cannot be entirely Aries because it's also part of Taurus. And teeth are also in Capricorn, which I would argue teeth are also part of the face. So you could make arguments there.
Yes.
Also,
I
I just realized this. This is so funny. So looking at, I guess we'll get to Leo in a sec, but that obviously caught my attention. Um, so we have Aries for the head, the brain, and the face. We have Taurus for the throat, the neck, and the lips, because the lips are now part of the neck and no longer part of the face. Gemini has the lungs, the hands, and the arms, because those are related. We have Cancer is the stomach, the breast, the chest, and the ribs. So kind of three of these things are related, and then one other thing is really not related. And then Leo, I think they're talking about the pericardial sac around the heart. I don't think they're talking about the other sac. But
wow.
but English is their second language, so I will give them a pass, but this is funny. But in that something that is interesting, again, the criteria. We have the heart, the presumably pericardial sac, which are related, and then we have the spine. Okay, sure. I mean, it's in the torso, and then we have the forearms,
The
but the
forearms are
arms are in
separate from the
Gemini.
arms.
Yeah, I mean the forearms technically, like, I mean they're anatomically they're named differently, but I mean, they are related. Like they have the same innervation. Neurologically, they have the same circulation. They have the same lymphatic drainage. So things that are, if something's going to affect your forearm, that's specifically Leo, but anything that affects your upper arm, that's Gemini. But we have processes that will generally impact both of them. So I'm confused about why we're splitting these up between Gemini and Leo. And also, what do the forearms have to do with the heart? I don't really know.
Hey, you got me.
And then again, with the weirdness, we have the intestines, lower spine. So the entire spine is Leo, but the lower spine is both Leo and Virgo. The fingers are Virgo, and the spleen is Virgo. So again, a very odd conglomeration of anatomy. Libra is kidneys, skin, and lumbar region. So again, more spine. So the spine is in Leo, Virgo, and Libra. In Scorpio is the bladder, the anus, the nose, and the appendix, which I would argue the appendix is part of the intestines, so should be Virgo. And the nose is part of the face, so should be Aries. The anus is also technically part of the intestines and should be Virgo.
Well, there is overlap on the zodiac chart
Mhm,
because of the way stars move. I mean, they're
mhm,
not static; they move. So,
mhm.
uh, over 2,000 years ago, when this was conceived, we were actually in a different star sign at your birth. Um, I'm a Gemini, but I would be, I believe, a Taurus back then. So there is overlap
Okay,
with the zodiac, so maybe that has something to do with the overlap here.
interesting. I have no idea. It really sounds like they just took. I mean, I think I almost know what happened. Like they back when astrology was developed, we didn't have good understanding of disease or really anything. So if you came up with a system and you didn't have other ways to explain it, it's easy to go to something like this and have a person come to you that says, "Yeah, I have this kind of symptom. I have stomach pain," and like their star sign happened to be Cancer, so you draw a connection. You intuit, okay, there's a connection here between the stomach and this person who has a Cancer star sign. Sure, you could get there, but we know now that the stars and the planets don't impact the body like this. We've learned since then, and it's kind of laughable to maintain this line of thinking that's just it's almost like a post hoc rationalization kind of like, yeah, well, this thing happened, so but I did already think that this other thing was a process, so let's relate it back to that. Like
It's
it's
the
like
connect the
throwing
dots game.
darts. It's a connect the dots game. Like it basically, yeah, I think we can combine both of our analogies here. You throw darts at a dartboard and then you draw lines between them and now you're like,
That's perfect.
it's a like I made this shape in my dartboard. It's a sign from God that I was meant to do something. Like no, you it was by chance that the darts fell where they did, and or maybe I mean maybe you're a really really good darts player and you can intentionally target certain areas, but that's a different analogy. But like if the darts fall where they do, it's not anything significant that you should just it's by chance that if you happen to draw lines between them, it's like cloud watching. There's not actually a duck in the sky. Like it just
Right.
happens to be that your brain perceived a pattern. And I think probably how this was developed was people found patterns and needed an explanation, and this is what they came up with.
Yeah, it's pareidolia, basically, finding patterns in things that don't actually have patterns.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh goodness. We have Cheese Network News in the chat. Breaking news: astrology is bunk. Everything depends on where stool was at the time of your birth. Stoolology. This is a thing now.
We have to incorporate that to the lore.
That is part of the lore now, absolutely. Yeah. So others of these we have Sagittarius, the hips, the thighs, the nerves, and so all of the nerves and all of the arteries are in Sagittarius. So everybody has to have some aspect of Sagittarius then. Because if you're going to have a disease that affects the nerves or the arteries of any other part of the body, then you'd have to be affected by Sagittarius. Or is my logic incorrect here?
No, I mean, it's laying it out pretty specific about what's each disease that corresponds to the zodiac. So I mean, that's
And then so the arteries are in Sagittarius and the circulation of blood is in Aquarius.
hmm.
So I think maybe things specifically relating to the arterial wall is Sagittarius and the blood is Aquarius. So if I had a, let's take something like prinzmetal angina, which is a spasm of a coronary artery that gives you chest pain that goes away. So if I had prinzmetal angina where my artery spasmed, that would be Sagittarius in the spasm, but it would be Aquarius in the lack of blood flow causing ischemia.
Hmm. And
So
and it still doesn't list any way to tell what's causing it. It just tells you this causes that, and there's no explanation.
right, it just lists these and just says, yeah, it just does. So not really helpful for if we were to try to use this. But again, I don't think any of these people, I don't think they've studied medicine. Because if they did, I don't think that they would be using such vague and broad anatomy and systems for this kind of thing. And this again, I think goes back to the Barnum statements, the fact that they intentionally use these very broad things
Mm-hmm.
because number one, there's no accountability if they're wrong. Because if you said, like, let's say you went to your doctor for your stomach pain and it turned out that it was something very specific, but it wasn't something that, I mean, your astrologer's not going to say specifically, yeah, you have cancer. They're not going to say that because that's a claim that gives them accountability, that gives you someone to blame if they're wrong. So they're not going to do something like that. What they're going to do is they're going to tell you, yeah, you have stomach issues, you have a stomach problem, but that's very vague. And if you found out that you didn't have a meaningful diagnosis, they could come back and say, oh, well, I wasn't diagnosing you. I wasn't saying something specific. I just said, oh, well, it's a problem. And then you could say, yeah, well, it's not cancer, but like you still you had a problem, you had a pain, which is a problem. So I was right. It's allowing them guaranteed correctness because
Like
it's
confirmation
not something
bias.
that can, yeah, it's confirmation bias because they can't be wrong. There's no way for them to be wrong in that.
Just had another thought. We're animals, so is there a branch of astrology that deals with animal astrology,
I'm
or
sure there
or
is. I'm
is
sure there is.
astrology like a speciality of humans alone?
I don't know. That would be a good thing to look into because I'm sure somebody has done it.
Got to be.
So we have this picture is kind of small, but we're going to talk about the 12 astrology houses and diseases. So this chart is apparently very complicated, and every article that I found when they're asked about how this works or like how you read the chart, they pretty much always come back with, well, it's so complicated and you need years of study to be able to correctly interpret the chart. So instead of giving us a mechanism to go off of, instead of giving us something to learn about and to actually test this, they just say, yeah, well, it's too complicated and you wouldn't understand it.
Hmm.
But how can I understand it if you're not going to teach me about it? It seems like maybe it's not real and you don't want us to test it.
Yeah, it seems like a cop out.
So anyway, so I don't know how to read this chart because no one will teach me. Maybe I should do a stream where I take a class on how to read the astrology chart,
That'd be interesting.
but I also don't want to pay money for that.
Well, no, not if you got to pay.
Yeah,
But
maybe I can find a free one. I'll talk to Brainbug and we'll see if we could find a class. But looking at this picture, it's kind of small. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit on this just so y'all can see it. So we have like in the middle, there's like body, physique, there's like mother, home, vehicles and property, adventures, study, child, age, luck, religion. Like
vehicles and property.
this, it seems like again a very weird combination of things that they've put into boxes.
Yeah, because like, how does vehicles apply to 2,000 years ago astrology?
I don't know. I don't know if they would have come up with this at that time, unless they've had like carriages or something to talk about.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh,
so the
yeah.
first house. So we know the parts of the body that are controlled by which sign, and now we have the houses. Um, so the above-most part of our body, the head, mind, hair, and skin, takes the falls in the first house. Also, physical ability and general health are governed by the first house of astrology. Moreover, it also indicates the native's physical stature, vitality, and vigor. However, if the ascendant cusp lord and the ascendant lord are well placed by house aspect and conjunction, it will give good health to a person. So this is something about like your houses, um, like for each of your signs, like the first house I think is your identity house, and then the second house is like they each have a different part of your life.
Hmm.
Something weird. And so if your first house like falls in Aries, let's say, then that's going to mean that you are more prone to have issues with your head or your brain or your face because your first house was in Aries, and that means that that's the body part that's susceptible. Which doesn't really make sense. But the fact
No.
that general health is falling in the first house, general health usually is not related to one body system. It's got multiple facets to it. Even take something like a fever, it's a systemic issue. Your whole body is going to be affected by it. You can't localize that to one of these signs or um, one of these areas. It just doesn't happen like that. So they're getting some fundamental science incorrect here.
Now, does this particular article deal anything with the stars or planets?
I have one that does. I think this one's more of the houses. Yeah,
The
the next
houses.
article has the planets on it, I
Gotcha.
think.
Gotcha.
Let me confirm that real quick. Oh yeah, no, the next one has the planets. So we have the first house. Yeah, your general health is here. Uh, and then the second house is the face, the right eye, not the left eye, the right eye only. The teeth, the tongue, the nose, the voice, the nails, and the brain state all fall under the second house. However, high fever, disease of the heart, stomach, and skin, bone fracture, leprosy, internal fever. We got fever listed here twice. Brain trouble are also caused by the weakening of the second house. So, what if my second house doesn't fall in Aries? Because if Aries, wait, so the head's in Aries, the bones can be in any of these other ones. So I guess you don't need to have all of these present at the same time. So I guess they picked one thing from multiples of the categories above and put them in the second house so that they could say, yeah, well, if you have one of these issues, of course, it's going to align with your house and your sign or something.
I like how it specifically mentioned bone fractures. like
Yes.
like
Yes.
astrology governs the accidents that you may have.
Yeah, like I had a bicycle accident. I crashed into a lamppost on my bike and, fractured my leg. It must be because Neptune was in this position at this time. Like, how could you possibly think that that's related? And especially, how could you think that that's causal?
I have no idea.
That's, yeah. So the third house, the neck, throat, collarbones, hands, breathing, and body growth are all things that fall under the third house. However, it can also cause diseases of the head. So again, the head has shown up in every single one of these. Poisoning, cuts, wounds, sore eyes, itches, blood pressure, loss of energy. It sounds like they're just like this is a very sad attempt at cold reading.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. I couldn't think of the word.
Also, diseases of female organs, bone fractures here again. Bone fractures in the second house, but also in the third house. Tumors, cancer, piles, menstrual disorder, ulcer, dysentery, rectal diseases, chickenpox also fall under the third house. Like, they're
They're
just
just
throwing
throwing out
things
the
out.
names of, yeah.
They're throwing things out, hoping something's going to hit. And then, of course, the second that something hits, you're like, whoa, they were right. But look at everything that they've thrown out.
Yeah, it's counting the
That would
hits
be
and ignoring the
misses.
misses because, yeah, exactly.
Ignoring a huge list of misses. And then the fourth house, our chest, heart, lungs, blood pressure, again, blood pressure, and the breasts of women, not the breasts of men, because they're not the same, fall under the fourth house. However, this house is mostly related to the diseases caused by women hormones and has a tendency to weaken the body parts up to a certain limit, which can even cause death. This is misogynistic. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're not. It's definitely categorizing us differently.
And the fact that women hormones has a tendency to weaken the body parts up to a certain limit that can cause death. So having female hormones makes you weak, is what they're saying.
That's wow. I don't have much
And
to
this is
comment on
due to the
that.
planets.
Well, I mean, the planets, they're supposedly gods under astrology
Oh, yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
So, and you know how misogynistic gods can get.
True. Gods are just threatened by women. Because if you were an all-powerful or extremely powerful deity, I would probably be scared of women because the one thing in the universe that could stand up to an all-powerful deity and probably win probably are women. Like, I'll give them that.
Hell yeah.
So the fifth house, the upper abdomen, heart, gallbladder, vitality, because that's
Again,
again not in the first house, it's now in the fifth house. Intestines, intelligence, thinking, sperm, and wait. So the womb is here, but I thought the women were in fourth house. And during the period of fifth house, the health of people improves and they find themselves moving towards a stable health state. Okay.
hmm. Um, yeah. Okay.
The sixth house, our digestive system, kidney, uterus, anus all fall under the category of the sixth house. However, the sixth house in the astrology chart, that is a tongue twister. Sixth house in the astrology chart is also known as the house of sickness in medical astrology, as if any of the other ones weren't sickness. So this one's sickness. So if you're going to be sick, you're going to have something in the sixth house, but also in the other houses. So I mean, we're getting all of these are it's just repetitive at this point because these all just say kind of the same things. So I
It's
think
almost like
let's
somebody
move
wrote this
over.
out and
Yeah.
they didn't do any proofreading. It's like, put this one here. Did I already write this down? We'll just throw it in there.
So let's move over to the other article. So here we have how zodiac signs relate to the body. We have kind of similar thing we saw in the last article about the signs and the sign associations, although this one gets a lot more specific. So in Aries, they have the head, the brain, the skull, the cranium, which is the skull, the eyes, the pituitary gland, and the adrenals. The adrenal glands are related to Aries, probably because Aries is for like anger. It's a fire sign. So fire relates to epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are produced in the adrenal glands. So that's, I think, where they're going with that. So at least we have some more well-defined categories in this one. But it's interesting that the entire parasympathetic nervous system is in Taurus. Um, but I want to let Kyle kind of get into some of the planets and
All right.
the fun stuff here. So, generally, the astrological signs are the anatomical correspondence, and the astrological planets correspond to organ systems, individual organs, and other parts of the body. However, the astrological planets can sometimes have a similar meaning to the signs in that if a planet is unfavorably aspected, it affects the sign the planet rules. Did that
Unfavorably
make any
aspected?
sense?
No, not really. I'm glad that wasn't the only one.
I'm trying to. It sounds like they. Have you ever seen the Deepak Chopra sayings generator?
Yes, I've used it a few times.
This sounds like that.
It does. And
This sounds like a.
I'm confused as to why the position of the planets matters at all because the planets are never in the same position. The entire solar system is moving all the time. Like
Mhm.
we revolve around the sun, but the sun itself is moving through the universe. So at no
Yeah,
point are these planets ever in the same position again.
yeah, and I think a bot wrote this. I like. I have a hard time. I mean, I do think a person wrote this, but at the same time, I have a really hard time believing that a human would willingly write something that makes this little sense. Um, So we have a medical astrological planetary example. Sometimes a difficulty with the sun, no matter what sign the sun is in, can indicate a heart problem because the sun is the ruler of Leo and Leo rules the heart. However, this would need to be confirmed by other planetary indications. So this sounds circular.
Yeah.
So if I have a problem with the heart, why do I have a heart problem? Oh, because of the sun is in this position. Well, why is that the case? Oh, because the sun is the ruler of Leo. Okay, and then why is
And
that the case?
Leo
Well,
rules
because
the heart,
Leo rules the
and
heart. And then so then
yeah,
why does that happen? Because the sun is the ruler of Leo. It's like, okay, we haven't gotten anywhere. We haven't established how this happens or why the sun is related to the heart. We don't know why Leo rules the heart. It's just a claim that Leo rules the heart and the
yeah.
sun
It's
rules Leo.
This is a
And
bunch of
so
claims
therefore
with
your
no
heart problem,
mechanism. Sorry.
well, it's just circular.
Yeah.
So planetary disease states. A medical astrologer must know how each planet reacts or acts to indicate a possible disease state in the body. The disease states that follow are descriptive of a planet involved in a hard planetary aspect with another planet. What is
What does
Do you
that
know what they're
mean?
referring to with the hard planetary aspect?
Unless they're
I might
referring to the
look this up.
solid planets that aren't the gas giants, then I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm looking this up. Okay, so The aspects are the degree of angles between planets.
Oh, because the angles
Okay.
matter. Okay.
Was the angles of the planets. Yeah. This is confusing. This is really confusing. And it's still a lot of word salad. Maybe I need to do a video about how they did these calculations, because that's another thing.
Right.
But so we have let's go through each of these, and I'm kind of curious about your thoughts about why someone might relate this certain planet to these conditions. Although the sun's not a is the sun a planet?
No. No, the
Okay,
sun
I
is a
wouldn't
star.
wanted to make sure. The sun's not a planet, but it's listed as a planet. So the sun
That's very
can
wrong.
cause inflammation, infection, fever, and energy problems. So your infection is not because you have a pathogen in your body. It's not an organism that causes you to feel sick. It's because the sun did it. The sun was in a certain position, and that's causing the bugs to infect you.
I find it really funny that they didn't list the actual one thing that the sun can cause, which is cancer.
Yeah, yeah, cancer. And if you don't get enough of the sun, you can get vitamin D deficiency, which can
Hmm.
lead to hypocalcemia. So you have real issues that can be caused by the sun or the lack of sun,
And maybe
and they're
that's what
not
they're
using
equating.
it.
They're saying because the sun can cause these illnesses, that the other planets must have something that they cause as well.
Maybe that might be their logic. But I'm just trying to imagine little bacteria and viruses. Like imagine this virus being like, oh, well, the sun is in the first house.
Yeah,
Like,
how would
I
they
gotta go
know?
infect. It's infection time. It's infection time, boys. Like, how would they? How would a virus know that it's time to infect somebody? Mercury's in retrograde. I gotta go. Now's the time.
I want to talk about that for just a second. Mercury in retrograde is so bullshit. It is an apparent motion. It is not an actual motion. People look at it and they think, "Oh, it's moving backwards." No, it's not. It's just from your perspective.
Yeah,
Like
it's so fun.
there are no
Um,
particles in motion in any opposite direction. That's not how that works.
so the moon is the moon a planet?
No.
Okay, so we have two. The first two planets listed are not planets. So the
I'm
moon causes emotional disorders, water retention, allergic reactions, mucus formation, altered body rhythm, acute ailments, or female disorders.
female disorders.
Yep, it's specific.
Because
Um,
the moon knows, apparently.
the moon knows. The moon also knows uh how to tell your body to release IgE and histamine. It tells like your mast cells and your B cells just know like, oh, the moon's in Taurus, gotta go. I gotta go cause some allergies. Like, do how would this
I'm trying not to
happen?
laugh. This is hilarious.
Like, it's honestly hard to do a very constructive debunk of something like this because it's just so out there, and it doesn't even try to make sense. It doesn't try to give a mechanism or anything. Like, a lot of the pseudoscience that we address is so easy. Well, it's so easy to debunk because they make claims. For one, these people aren't really even making good claims. They're just throwing things at a dartboard. But at least like other pseudoscientists, like we saw last week with Josh Axe, he takes things that are known to be true, little details that are known to be true, and exaggerates them and applies them to contexts where they don't apply. And so at least like people take people like that seriously because of the few things that they get right. With something like this, There's nothing that they're getting right. So I'm having a hard time really coming up with constructive criticism because it's
There's yeah, it's really crappily thrown together claims with no explanation behind it. I mean, even with like going through pseudoscience or even religious claims, at least there's often something behind it that it can give a reason for why you believe what you believe. But with this, there's nothing.
so also the acute ailments. So does that mean that if you have something acute, anything acute is going to be related to the moon? So are all the rest of these chronic?
Oh.
So, but infections are generally acute. You can have chronic infections, but the majority of infections are acute. The majority of fevers are acute. Um, Others down the list, like many of these are acute. So the moon then has to be involved in all of them.
See, it's just so much overlap that there's no way to determine what's doing what, if anything.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's very messy. So Mercury causes mental or nervous disorders, respiratory disorders, possibly speech disorders, and hormonal problems. So it's interesting, and this is something that comes up. I think every single week there's something about like demonizing and uh, making a pathology of neurodivergence,
Hmm.
and this is something else that we're seeing here.
So astrology is ableism.
Probably. I mean, people love to blame this stuff on something. People don't like to accept that there are variations of normal and that not everybody is the same. So if you're different than me, then your Mercury must be in retrograde. So your Mercury, not anyone else's Mercury, only your Mercury.
Right.
Because we all have a little we have our own Mercury inside of us. All of us.
Along with a Uranus.
We yeah, we do have a I hope that we all have not Uranus, because that would be weird. I don't. I. That's something else. Anyway,
Off top.
any thoughts about Mercury?
Yeah, it's a great planet. I don't see anything past that.
Cool. Venus. Venus is an imbalance of bodily energies, benign growths, a blood sugar imbalance, problems with venous circulations, and a lack of tone. So, Kyle,
Ah,
the diabetes is from Venus.
Venus is the bastard. Got it.
Yeah, it's Venus.
Oh, wow. So it's funny because I always every clear night I go outside and I look at Venus because it's the brightest object in the night sky besides the moon. It all makes sense now, Ben. This it all
It's
makes sense.
fate. That's why you see Venus so clearly. It's like, I know what you're
So
dealing
to
with.
take out my diabetes, I have to nuke Venus.
Yes, that is the only answer. Mars is related to inflammation and infection. So again, the overlap. Them COVIDs are like, well, Mars and the sun, therefore I gotta do this thing. Blood
COVID is
ailments,
from Mars,
wounds,
confirmed.
acidosis, burns, surgery. Surgery is from Mars.
I mean, what you doctors do definitely is alien to me.
I mean, it's Martian. Surgeons are Martians. I knew it.
Oh, more
Sudden
lore.
illness. So as opposed to acute illness from the moon, this sudden illness is from Mars, and muscular disorders.
muscular disorders from which one are we on?
Mars. That was
Mars
Mars.
still? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Isn't Mars all? I read that Mars is also related to the blood because of the color of Mars
yes.
and how it's
Yes.
covered in iron
Mhm.
oxide, and there's iron in our blood.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a video that we're going to watch that talks about that too. That's just such a stretch. I mean, there's iron on Earth too.
There's a giant iron core.
And that's how we get iron in the blood is from Earth. It's
Yeah,
funny how
not Mars.
they don't talk about the relation of Earth and any of our illnesses because any human that has ever gotten a disease has been on Earth at some point.
Well, they don't want to demonize their mother, their home.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe that's maybe none of this really works. Um,
No, it
Jupiter,
couldn't be.
Jupiter is problems with arterial blood circulation, disease caused by excess, obesity, difficulty in fat assimilation, or problems with the liver.
That's
So he
just
has
because
some fat
Jupiter's
phobia too.
large. That's fat shaming.
It is fat shaming. Absolutely. This is problematic. And how many people do you think like would buy into this because of something like fat phobia? How many people do you
Oh,
think have sought out help from a medical astrologer because they've been shamed about this?
oh, probably too many. If it's one, it's too many.
And this is something that we don't like to talk about a lot because it's a hot button topic, but this is dangerous. It's dangerous to get people to go seek out this kind of thing because they've been stigmatized their whole lives. It's dangerous.
Yeah, honestly, the followers, pardon me, of astrology are just as much as of they're the victims, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah. So quickly going through these last few. Jupiter's for problems with arterial blood circulation. Oh, we talked about Jupiter. Saturn is chronic disease, hardening, crystallization, obstruction, malignancy, atrophy, skin disease, and underactivity of the organ ruled by the sign Saturn tenants in the chart. So underactivity. I mean, you could say that for any of these. The underactivity of the organs listed under Saturn. Um, Uranus is for incoordination, spasm, sudden illness, convulsions, seizures, stress-related ailments, heart palpitations, and accidents caused by electricity or explosion.
So, oh wow, that I
He
wasn't
got struck
expecting
by
that.
lightning. That's Uranus. Must be
Uh,
Uranus. Seizures come from the anus. Neptune. This is another dangerous one. Drug addiction, alcoholism,
oh,
coma, poisoning, malignancy, hidden illness, drug overdose, drug sensitivity, lowered immune system, and misdiagnosis.
seriously?
Misdiagnosis is of Neptune.
If somebody has a drug addiction problem and they are a proponent of medical astrology, what kind of help do you think you can get if it's just destiny by the planets?
Mhm.
Like
That's
that seems
yeah.
dangerous to me.
It almost sounds like AA in a way where it's like you're not in control. Like you have to
Yeah.
give it over to this higher power, and we know how dangerous that is, and that's basically what it's saying. You're not in control of your addiction problem. It's related to the planets. Oh, this is perfect. So medical astrology equals Neptune. Yes, because misdiagnosis is of Neptune.
Oh, oh.
If
I didn't
stool
think
was
about
on
that.
Uranus when you were born, you will probably have hemorrhoids. Wow. Okay. Um, and then Pluto. That's not a planet. Malformation, malignancy, massive infections, bacterial infections, or amputation are from Pluto.
I wonder what an astrologer would do when they realize Pluto is one of the tens of thousands of other icy bodies in that area.
Yeah.
Like, do they have no impact? Because there are things bigger than Pluto out there.
So the brain and the body are intimately intertwined. It's important to keep in mind that most hard aspects in the natal chart or by transit will express themselves at the level of psychological issues or events only. However, a psychological issue or an event such as a minor accident can be the background of physical or health problems. So they're blaming psychology on the planets and again saying that you don't have control over your psychology or like and you can't go get help, you can't do things to make it better. It's astrology. It is fate. It is something that you are just destined to have, which again is dangerous.
I had something to say and it just escaped me.
Let me know if you think of it. So the sun square Saturn example. This sounds like word salad already. Sun square Saturn indicates that a person's life force is held back in some way. Hold on. Okay, so before I read this, um I want Kyle and people in the audience to pretend like you are reading this as it applies to you. Like if you're seeking medical treatment for whatever and you read this and it was addressed to you specifically. I want to see
Okay.
how many people this could apply to. So the sun square Saturn indicates that a person's life force is held back in some way. Psychologically, this is an individual who feels unworthy, has a lot of inner tension, and feels restricted or weighed down by duties and responsibilities. This is also a person who is motivated to push through those feelings, work harder, and never give up. Health wise, this is an individual who can suffer from overwork and exhaustion. This can result in all sorts of health issues, including chronic fatigue, chest pain, and heart palpitations. These health concerns are likely to be exacerbated by difficult transits or progressions. This is where the predictive aspect of medical astrology comes in. So I could think of a few ways where this would apply to me.
Yeah. I mean, a few of those things were spot on. Some of it didn't apply.
Like, I think at some point in all of our lives, at some point we all feel unworthy. At some points we have inner tension. We feel bogged down by certain duties and responsibilities that we've committed to. Maybe we've overcommitted ourselves. Maybe it was forced upon us through our work or family things that have happened. We feel restricted or weighed down. Uh, and I think most of, if not all of us, when we have conflict in our lives or we have something that stresses us out, I think most of us do have a desire to push through, work harder, and never give up, especially in a society and a culture that tells us that that is admirable. We were taught that when you feel like you're not good enough, when you feel like something's not right, you just put your nose to the grindstone and you push harder. So I
Yeah,
think,
this is. Go ahead.
yeah, I think this applies to all of us. And I think we all suffer from overwork and exhaustion because we grind too hard. And I do think that while I don't have chest pain, heart palpitations, or fatigue, most of us are at risk for developing any of those.
Yeah, it seems like this is just pandering to the basic human experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
So
very
they think that,
non-specific Barnum statements.
yeah, so they think that they can use this to predict medicine and predict what issues someone's going to struggle with. And they even bring up Hippocrates,
Hmm.
which sure, Hippocrates had some good ideas. Hippocrates was more about philosophy, the philosophy of medicine, than the actual science and the actual medical practice, because of course we've expanded our knowledge since the time of Hippocrates. Like, I hope that most doctors have moved beyond an ancient Greek level of knowledge. But
You'd
there
hope.
are a few good things in the philosophy of Hippocrates. But the statement, like, kind of the appeal to authority, that we all view Hippocrates as a valuable contributor to medical philosophy, and saying that a physician without knowledge of astrology has no right to call himself a physician. That would have been what they believed back then. But I think if Hippocrates was around today with the evidence that we have, I don't think Hippocrates would believe any of that.
Probably not.
Like, I mean, and I don't know Hippocrates. He could have been not very skeptical, but I think Hippocrates probably would be a skeptic at this point if he was still alive.
I mean, with the overwhelming evidence to the contrary of what the original belief was, I don't know how you could possibly hold the old belief.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a lot of garbage. We have a video, and this is I'm gonna get furious about this. Um,
Yeah.
I sent Kyle this video beforehand because I found this today, and this is funny. This is funny. So I'm gonna let him talk a little bit, and you'll see what I mean.
Oh,
Can you hear it?
no audio.
Oh, no audio? Okay, hold on. I think it. Because I had made sure I clicked share system audio, but then when I was switching between tabs, it might have gotten turned off. I think I closed that video. So any other thoughts from that last article about the planets?
Yeah. Being somebody who spends a lot of their free time studying real science behind astronomy, it really kind of hurts that people can take that and twist it into this thing that it has become. Um, it's I don't know, it's a little disheartening because studying the planets for what they actually are is so much more fulfilling than attributing all of these claims to, like these supernatural claims are. I'm losing my train of thought here.
We can come back to it. It's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, so let's listen to this guy and see what he has to say.
Interested me for a long time is medical astrology. In this video, I'm going to talk about what that is and how it can benefit you.
So you'll hear his very first statement that he makes is
For those
hilarious.
that are new to the channel, my name is Omar, the creator of Black Astrology.
Okay, besides this, his name is funny and not funny. But the next,
welcome back. Good to
his
see you.
first point that
Medical
he makes is funny.
astrology is such a deep topic that covers the overlap between medicine, nutrition, and planetary energies. This topic covers
Energies.
everything from your
So
diet.
real quick, yeah, Kyle. I know Kyle wanted to talk about energies.
Yeah. So whenever astrology is talked about, especially when it comes to the planets, they're always talking about good or negative energies being thrown around. But energy is a mathematical term that describes the work that a system can do.
Mhm.
And there's no mechanism besides gravitational energy that's being distributed by the planets. So that's never ever laid out clearly. It's just this word energy with no context is being thrown out.
But
So
can we define? Certain ability to do work as being moral or immoral.
I think we need SR here for that.
Yeah, SR, I need you, man. Talk about the morality of
The
energy.
morality of astrology.
Mm-hmm. So he's gonna say something really, really important.
To vitamins you might be deficient in, along with a whole other range of categories. But first, let me say that I feel very compelled, almost like a desire to say that I am not a doctor in any way. I actually have zero medical knowledge, and
So that statement is very important.
Yes.
That he is not a doctor and he has no medical knowledge. So we have a person, zero, admits to zero medical knowledge. And yet he's going to tell us about our health and about medicine.
Yeah, that
Does
should be
that
the
make
key
sense?
takeaway. That should be the key takeaway from this video. He is not a doctor and has no medical knowledge.
So he's saying that as a disclaimer, which he's not compelled by some spiritual forces or his consciousness to say that. He's compelled by terms of service on YouTube and knowing that he could get his ass sued if he were to make medical claims that someone took as advice. But he's not giving medical advice and he doesn't know anything. But I'm going to make this video anyway and probably monetize it. And, if you don't benefit from it, that's your own problem. If you're negatively affected by it, that is your own problem. Obviously not his fault.
all of the information in this video is just for entertainment purposes.
Mhm,
In fact, I know as much about medicine as my boy Leo over here.
Do you concur? Concur with
Yeah, he knows
what,
that
sir?
that much about medicine. We don't need to watch the
There's a basket.
the
We
clip.
concur.
We don't need to watch this clip. This is a long clip. Okay. Here we go.
So, with that being said, let's start with the fact that each sign and planet rules a specific body part. Now, let's start with Aries, for example. Aries rules the top of the head, the eyes. Taurus rules the neck, the throat, the larynx. Gemini, the shoulders, arms.
So once again, we have someone saying, yeah, this Aries rules the head. And we just know this. And does not explain how we know that Aries rules the head or why we came to that conclusion. It's just another list of, yeah, this is connected to this.
Right.
How is this related? Can you tell me?
If I can just get that
Arms,
answer, I'd be
hands.
happy.
Yeah.
Cancer rules the stomach. Leo rules the heart, the back, and the spine. Virgo, the intestines or the digestive system. Libra, the lower back and the kidneys. And Scorpio, I'm sure you can guess, rules the genitals. Sagittarius
Scorpio rules the
thighs,
genitals.
the legs.
I want that on a
Capricorn
t-shirt.
rules the
Yes.
bones, the skeletal system, specifically
should
the
do that.
knees. Aquarius rules the calves and ankles. And Pisces rules the feet. But it's also important to consider the why and the how astrology plays a role on your health.
Here we go. He's going to tell us. He's going to tell us how and
This
why
is
this
it.
works.
This is
I'm
it.
ready. I'm ready to be converted. I'm going to become a medical astrologer. Bring it to me. Give me the facts.
It's worth a moment of deep thought to really understand that a lot of disease starts in the mind or in the mental state. And what do I mean by that? For example, too much
What?
mental or emotional turmoil can manifest itself as anxiety or nervous energy.
The mechanism is it's all in your brain.
Well, problem solved. Let's go home, people.
Yeah.
It's all in your head.
So because you can have physical manifestations of your mental health, therefore they're all always related. Every time you have a physical symptom, it's because of your brain. It's because of your mind.
I'm sure my diabetes is psychosomatic.
Yeah. It's funny because I guess this is a point where they do take something that is truth and exaggerate it and reason fallaciously with it. I don't have SR here to tell me which specific fallacy is happening, but he's doing something where
equivocation.
What?
Oh, is he equivocating two things?
I don't know. There's I need a philosopher here. He is taking something that is true in one direction, flipping it around to the other direction, and saying that it's still true in that other direction.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like the all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. It's like, yeah, we do know that psychosomatic manifestations exist. We do know that you can have a physical symptom that goes back to a psychological cause. That does not mean that the psychology is the cause for all somatic illness. So that's what he's doing, and I don't want to be wrong about what specific fallacy that is, but I know it is one.
It's one of them.
It's one of them. And the important thing isn't to know the names of the fallacies necessarily. Like, I mean, the concept is really what's important. I'll let him talk a little bit more.
And all this nervous energy can really take a toll on your body. And it's well known there's a close tie to high levels of anxiety and the detrimental effects it has on the body.
I mean,
astrology
you're
really
not
shows
wrong.
our mental disposition, how we think, how we react to our circumstances. And these reactions and these thoughts can have a physical manifestation. So it's not hard.
So before he talks more about other things, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to speed him up just a little bit. So he starts off now talking about how the brain is responsible for these physical symptoms and that astrology addresses the psychological aspects of health. So take that claim that he is making and notice where he goes and see if that is still the claim that he's making, because he does end up going a lot more into physical mechanisms. And if this is the basis of these other issues, you'll find that these don't line up. He's smuggling in multiple claims here while stating that this is the one claim.
Hard to see how, for example, if you have too much worry or you're focused on something that's really bothering you, and how that anxiety of a certain outcome can build up in your body as tension or back pain or muscle pain. So that's the physical manifestation that we're talking about when we discuss astrology. Medical astrology is
so
really
good.
useful
So
in
astrology
providing...
can predict that you're going to have back pain.
Yeah,
I don't think
if that was actually a thing, then people could get preemptive treatment.
Well, and also, I don't think they understand the lack of usefulness that has. Like, let's say it did predict that you were going to get back pain. Okay, is that going to change what I'm going to do about it? Like, I'm not going to...
necessarily.
It's like, I need to know more about the back pain and what happened in order to treat appropriately. So I'm going to have to do my differential diagnosis anyway. So what utility does this have other than providing astrologers with money?
Well, I mean, I was thinking, like, if you can predict at least vaguely the ailments that you're going to get, I mean, it would seem logical that you'd be able to correct your course of action. But that doesn't seem to be what people are actually able to do. So,
yeah, like anything that we do in medicine with diagnosis, we do for its utility. And if something is not going to change what we do about it, it's usually not worth doing the test at all. Like for a virus, like if you have a viral respiratory infection, like you have a cold, does me like I could get a swab and I could culture the virus and tell you, I could tell you exactly what virus it is. But is knowing that it's one virus versus another, is that gonna am I gonna treat your cold any differently?
No.
No. So why would I waste someone's money and time to get that test done if I'm not going to do anything about it? Like, what's the point? And the patient
in that
would
case, it
be
does seem pretty
frustrated.
useless.
Yeah, like you can. I mean, there's certain cases where at least having assurance is worth the effort, but that's things such as like cancer, like certain people who have genetic predispositions to certain types of cancer, even if they're a low risk at the time, they might want to get screened because it relieves their stress and worry about if they have that condition. So in that case, even if I'm not going to manage something differently, well, and I mean, and that's not even a perfect example because I would, if I found something on that, I would treat them differently. I would treat the cancer that they have. But for having the reassurance that nothing is wrong, that could be worth it for somebody. That could be worth spending the money and could be worth having an invasive test. But that's not the common case. And with something like astrology, that's not even claiming to be able to predict something specific like cancer. They're saying very vague, you're going to have stomach problems. That doesn't tell me anything. Even if it were to predict a stomach problem, which stomach problem?
Right.
I can't act on anything that's not specific enough.
You with awareness. Looking at your chart, it will help to illuminate some of those areas or illnesses you may be prone to or have a predisposition to. For example, let's take a illness such as hyperparathyroidism. The parathyroids are ruled by Saturn, and hyperparathyroidism is when there's an overactive parathyroid gland. So you're looking at the gland ruled by Saturn, which produces calcium in the blood, right? Saturn rules the bones, calcium structure. And then you're looking at an overactive parathyroid. So you're essentially assuming that maybe that Saturn in your chart is being activated by a planet like Mars or Jupiter. Jupiter tends to expand. And in fact, the overactive parathyroids are usually caused by a growth of the parathyroid glands in the back of the neck, which overproduce calcium. So this is
There's a lot wrong here. There's a lot scientifically wrong here. And this is so funny because he already said that he doesn't know anything about medicine, and he's making that very clear in this. And this is something I can actually very confidently debunk. So, small thing, but the parathyroids are not in the back of the neck. They are in the front of the neck. They are behind the thyroid gland, which is in the front. So you could even find your thyroid on yourself. Like if you have these neck muscles in the front, kind of near if you find your sternal notch, little dip in the front, go up a little bit, you find these neck muscles. In between that is your thyroid gland. And if you were to swallow, you would potentially be able to feel something that's kind of soft under your fingers. That's your thyroid gland. You can feel your thyroid. The parathyroids are right on the back of the thyroid, which is why if you get your thyroid removed, you can get hypoparathyroidism because they can accidentally remove parathyroid with the thyroid. But that's a small thing. He wouldn't know. But hyperparathyroidism is very complicated. And yes, a common cause of hyperparathyroidism is parathyroid adenoma, which can secrete hormones, parathyroid hormone, which the parathyroid does not produce calcium in the blood. It increases absorption of calcium, it increases absorption of vitamin D, and it increases the resorption of bone so that the calcium in the bone is then used in the blood. So if you have less calcium in the blood, parathyroid hormone is going to essentially reallocate resources so that you have some in the blood. And the way you're going to do that, you're going to take it from the bone, you're going to take it from being excreted and keep it inside. So that's what parathyroid hormone does. And it's not always an adenoma. You can have hyperparathyroidism, like an adenoma would cause primary hyperparathyroidism, where it's related to the parathyroid itself. You can also have certain endocrine conditions, such as multiple endocrine neoplasia type 1 or Men's syndrome type 1, which relates to pituitary, or I think it's pituitary, pheochromocytoma, and parathyroid adenomas. That's a way. You could just have overactive glands. That's primary hyperparathyroidism. You can also have secondary hyperparathyroidism, and that's usually related to kidney failure, where you have an increased need for hyperparathyroid or for parathyroid hormone. So you get hyperparathyroidism in that the kidney is failing and you are excreting too much calcium. You need more, so you secrete more parathyroid hormone. Over time, like as your body knows that you need more of this, you produce more cells in the parathyroid to secrete more hormone. This is just a compensatory mechanism for the kidneys not functioning. And then tertiary hyperparathyroidism is really fun to study and really a brain trip, is where you have a prolonged period of hypocalcemia secondary to actually, no, sorry, I got those a little bit mixed up. So it's the secondaries related to insufficient vitamin D production in the kidney due to renal failure. So it's the renal kidney disease where you cannot convert vitamin D to its active form. And so since you can't do that, you think you need more calcium. Really, you need more vitamin D. But you think you need more parathyroid hormone, so you produce more of it. That's secondary. And then tertiary hyperparathyroidism is due to chronic renal failure as well. But where you've had prolonged hypocalcemia, you've had prolonged lack of calcium, and so you have autonomous oversecretion of PTH. That was a lot of nonsense. But my point here with that little lecture on hyperparathyroidism is that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and it's not the planets. We understand the mechanism of hyperparathyroidism. We understand it. He doesn't understand it. And since he doesn't understand it, he's relating it back to astrology and using it to prove his point. He's incorrect.
Well said.
Sorry about my rant. I do that occasionally.
No, that was great.
An example of how, looking at your chart, you may see if you have Saturn afflicted by Mars or Jupiter, how that can manifest as an illness in the body. Another example would be anemia, which is the red blood cells' inability or lack of ability to carry oxygen to the other parts of the body. The most common type of anemia is caused by a deficiency of iron in the blood, which when you think about Mars being the red planet, right? Why is it red? Because there's a high concentration of iron on the planet Mars, which then oxidizes and turns red. So there's some symbolism there for you as well. Having anemia can make you feel fatigued, tired, or even just overall lethargic.
So he just listed 3 of the same thing: fatigue, tired, and lethargic. So all the same thing. Iron deficiency anemia can also cause nausea, can cause pallor, can cause hypoxemia. It can even cause certain presentations similar to porphyria. If you watch my videos on porphyrias.
Real quick, excuse me for just like 30 seconds.
Oh, no problem. I can go on another rant here about anemia. So he's, again, who doesn't understand science, he admitted to that. But this is him using intuition to draw a pattern where there isn't one and just connecting the dots willy-nilly because it makes sense to him. And I talk about this frequently on this channel, and this is something that I'm very passionate about, that intuition is poor reasoning. You cannot use intuition or a gut feeling to just to make conclusions. You can't reliably do that, because this is very similar to faith. If I said that I have faith that God exists, I have faith that prayer is going to heal my illnesses, I cannot reliably draw a conclusion from that. Like I just believe that my God is the correct one. Therefore it's true. I could say that about another person's religion, their faith. They believe their faith is true. So how can I draw my conclusion when another person can draw totally different conclusion from the same reasoning? This is the same here with intuition and medical illnesses and diseases. If you use that, I could use that same logic, that same intuition to say, well, I just have this gut feeling that you're not sick. Let's say I have somebody coming in to the emergency department with chest pain, and they, you know, they have chest pain. I don't think I need to get an EKG. I don't think I need to do any scans or anything, because I just have a gut feeling that that's not their problem. I have a gut feeling that it's a muscle issue. So I'm going to send them home and not do any workup because I'm just confident in myself. That's the same reasoning that he's doing here. So even if you can draw a pattern between these two things that seem to be related, if I use that logic anywhere else, I could kill somebody. And this is why it's dangerous. Intuition can be used to rule in possibilities, but cannot be used to rule out possibilities. I ranted a little bit again.
All good. I'm glad you feel
But I
the
noticed
time.
you're back, so
Yeah. Just needed to stand up for a minute.
yeah. Any thoughts about Mars and the red planet and anemia?
And anemia. Yeah. Just the jump you have to make to get to that is wild to me. Mars is not. It's. It's funny. Mars is kind of like a sister planet to Earth.
Mhm.
Does he talk about Earth at all in this at all?
I don't think so. I don't think he does.
Does nobody talk about Earth with astrology?
I don't think so.
That seems like a big thing they're leaving out.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're kind of running low on time here. We've covered a lot of ground with this. And he does the same for the rest of this video. He does the same thing where he just draws these dots, connects them, and says that that's medically related. And he also, I think, something else that he does and other people have done in their astrology is they say that astrology does not diagnose. We just predict what you're susceptible to, which is incredibly lazy and not useful. Like I think, like, either make the claim or don't, but don't do this wishy-washy stuff, because you know that we could, if you made a claim, we could actually demonstrate whether or not it's true. And these people don't want to accept the fact that it could possibly not be true. So they're going to use excuses and say, well, we're not trying to make these claims, because they know that they could be proven wrong.
And one of the dangers of medical astrology is that if you think you have an ailment that's caused by the position of the planets, what if you don't seek help simply because you're waiting until the planets are out of that particular alignment? And
Yeah.
And in that time that you waited, something happens.
Absolutely. And that's why this matters. And we can sit here and laugh at people who do astrology and things. And it's funny, it's entertaining. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, you could say that we're hard on these people, that we're being mean to people who have uh, a lack of understanding in science, but we're not doing this just for the laughs of debunking people who say silly things.
And this is important.
This is dangerous, and people's lives can be affected by this reasoning. And I think it is important to make sure people are being safe and people know how to make good decisions for themselves. Reasoning matters.
Reasoning matters.
So, any other thoughts kind of to debrief from what we learned about?
Well, we've talked about a lot. We've covered a lot. In closing, pretty much just if you think there's something wrong with you, go seek a medical doctor. Do not rely on the planets to tell you about your body. That is irresponsible to yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. So, on a lighter note, once again, where can people find you, Kyle?
They can find me at CosmicKyle on YouTube. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, I am Bearded Monkey.
And there's reasons, of course, why I brought Kyle on here. And like the primary reason is because Kyle has some really good content and Kyle has some really good knowledge about space. And he's very passionate about what he does with his space videos. And I think if you don't follow Kyle on any of these, then you're missing out. And I think you all could benefit from listening to what Kyle has to say. So I wanted you all to get to know Kyle, and definitely go subscribe to Cosmic Kyle. Go follow on Twitter. Do all the things because it is worth your time.
Thank you so much.
And with that, we have some things coming up. We have the Patreon after show, which Kyle, I think, is going to be hanging out in with us. We're going to be doing some fun reactions over there. So if you want to join the Patreon, along with our current patrons, Reggie and Kevin, who are amazing supporters of the channel, thank you for your support. Once again, the Patreon link is at the bottom there. So if you want to get in on the after party, that is where it happens. Here are my other links. You can find me, obviously, you are here on YouTube. I do have a Twitter. There's Twitch Trivia Nights every Friday on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. There's also a Discord where we hang out and have some nonsense. That's where you can find all of that. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Next week, we'll be having a special episode on I think the topic is going to be psychiatric naturopathy. So definitely stay tuned for that. It's going to be a weird one. But thank you, everybody, for joining, and we will see you all next time.